3, 2, 1. Boom. We are live. Thank you for tuning in to Crawfords House podcast. Sorry I've been away for a while. We got some things going on. Check it out, Drivewire Radio. Just all I'm going to say. It's up for you to check it out if you want to. You don't have to. But thank you for coming back. I have an incredibly interesting guest in the house today. She's a published author, a book, and poems. So different kinds of writing here. Bailey Ward, thank you for joining me in Crawfords House podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. It's an incredible opportunity to have someone who I would dare to say is so talented to have published books in my house. It's awesome. Thank you again. Thank you for being here. If you guys do want to check out the books, I'm going to do a little promo here real quick at the beginning, and then we'll throw them out at the end. We want to, I want people to support because as an author, that's the biggest thing you can do is supporting people, right?
That's very true.
I know a lot of people. A lot of people who read, so I'm just going to get, for those watching, just get a little more comfortable. We switched up at Crawfords House podcast here. I'm on the little couch today, and the guest is on the big couch. If you looked at the other videos before, I was on the big couch when we did Jailbirds and Sound Drive. So I'm switching things up always at Crawfords House podcast. That's why I got to tune in and watch it. It's crazy time. The two books we have here, the first one is The Darkness and the Dawn. This is a collection of poetry. If you just I can show it all to you, but I'd rather you go and check it out. And if you really like poems, to buy it, because it is an incredible book. A lot of just different lengths of poems. And I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about these, Bailey, because some of them got emotion, and it's all right from the heart. Some of them, right? So yep. It's gonna be exciting. She's shrugging it off, but it's gonna be a good discussion. And the second one here is The Thread of Life. The back, what is it? The synopsis on the back. It's a woman who meets with a psychic, like
yep.
a future predictor,
yep.
and tells her she's gonna die if she doesn't change her life, and she tries to predict how her life is gonna go so she can change the thread of the future to not die. Crazy. So check these out. I'll leave a link in the description. You can buy them from her on Facebook. Check her out. Bailey Ward, author. Writer. Bailey Ward, writer, is the Facebook link there. So we'll just jump into it. Bailey, thank you for being on. Why'd you start writing?
I the first time I remember dating back when I started writing, I was in grade 4, and we used to just do we had a journal, and we used to just do little exercises in it. And I remember I really enjoyed it, and my teacher would always write on my page oh my god, never stop doing this.
Never stop. You're doing it.
She made me read
encourage
one of my
the children,
poems.
teachers,
Yeah.
Anybody watching, encourage the children, because you can get magnificent things from
I
them.
wrote this poem on adolescence, and she made me read it in front of the entire school.
I was going to say the class,
no,
not the class, the school.
The school.
Interesting. That one's a little tougher on a child.
And then, I think after that, I was just, it kind of turned into a coping strategy for a while there, and it was always something I had in the back of my mind, I wanted to do. I used to want to write for National Geographic, and then I was like, nope, I'm gonna be an author.
I'm just gonna be well, hey, you can still write for National Geographic as an author, right?
You
don't never stop believing in yourself is the big goal, or is the big message I should try and get across here. I'm blind in my right eye, so I always feel like I'm missing something over here. Sorry for the people watching there, but I was gonna that was the first question I had written down. I don't know why I jumped to why instead of when, instead of the who, what, where, but
who, what, where?
Why? When did you start writing? So you said in grade 4, I believe it was. So you're a little 8-year-old Bailey writing, maybe 7. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know children's ages and grades. It's not something we know.
No.
So again, as a student, as just a class journal kind of deal. One of those things where, again, I'm not sure if they still do that in schools now, but it's encouraging the kids to write and kind of express emotions and things like that. And you had said that, it was a little emotional for you to perform it. Obviously, a child being forced to perform, in front of a crowd of a school. It's a little nervous.
I don't remember much of it, honestly. So.
But it's and then I lost my own track, as I was saying, but that ended up kind of leading into a little more of an emotional poetry writing, I would say. And that played a part in this book. And, in the long run, I should say. The book was released, we checked it, it was 2016, I believe it was. So
The poetry book?
Yeah, the poetry book here. Yes,
3
the
years
darkness
ago,
of and the
April
dawn, I should say.
26th.
3 years ago. It's exciting. The landmark is coming up. I'm
Yeah.
actually just going to leave that on the table just in case the people can see that on the camera, which I think they can. So off traffic now. I'm just off topic, not traffic. It ended up kind of coming down to, why do you like to write? Like, is it what made you keep wanting to write after the journal love of things?
I don't know. I always used to like write little stories on like my computer when I was a kid. Like I remember the first like book or whatever, if you will. I wrote like a story about wolves.
Wolves are badass. I agree. Like that's,
well, when you're little,
sweet.
they're cute, and I could
They're
put little
cute.
pictures from Google in there.
Yeah,
so it
Google
worked.
for the life of me.
I don't know. It just kind of became this thing I just really like to do, and whenever I had like a lot of emotion, like I would be like a really good way for me to just kind of get it out for the most part. Like a lot of poems are like
expressing yourself.
Yeah,
kind of deal.
they're in a very raw like state of emotion when
It's
they're
Raw
written
Bailey
for
when you
most
read
of
this
them.
poem
Yeah,
books.
yeah.
This
as
is
raw
her.
as it gets. Like
This is her pure emotion
Yeah.
here. And you said you had wrote essentially short stories, but the first book you publish is a book of poems.
Yeah.
What kind of what kind of end up influencing that change? Did the short stories kind of progress to poems because less is more in a sense sometimes?
Yeah, I think the poems were kind of more like the journaling, right? Like I took writer's craft in high school too, and
Right on.
that was a lot of like writing exercises and whatnot. But basically, I had all these poems for a bunch of years, and after my grandma passed away, she was like very supportive of my writing. So I said, I'm going to do my best to publish this. And I put probably about 100 manuscripts out to magazines.
Yeah.
I think I got about 34 or 36 rejections. And then I found this
See,
website where you can
you said
self-publish.
36 rejections. Usually it'd be
Yeah.
36 acceptance at best. So out of 100, only 36 people weren't smart enough to read it and think this is good writing. Shout out to them right now because y'all are missing out, man. Y'all guys are missing out.
I ended up finding this website where you can self-publish it.
Fantastic.
And I published my poetry book on my nanny's birthday for her. So
Oh my,
that was
that's
kinda,
fantastic.
Yeah,
I don't.
that was my like kind of way of
saying like
connected to her.
Yeah, like I'm gonna
yeah.
keep doing this for you. Like you believed in me so much, and there's no reason for me to stop.
Yeah.
Right? That's awesome. I guess what is for anybody who is a writer out there, never be afraid to express your craft. Find everyone who does support you in the act of writing because that support means so much when you want to release a book and when you're writing it. That it helps so much. Writers groups. I know they have probably poem groups and things like that. I didn't actually even think about writing anything like that. Did you ever end up doing any kind of outside of school writing activities or?
There was a like a 2-day event that they had in Woodstock where it was a published author, and honestly, I can't even remember what she published, but she basically just did this 2-day thing about writing, and so we just did some like writing exercises and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
I think like aside from that, I've read a poem for a mental health event that we had.
You do. I said you do work in the mental health industry as well.
Yeah.
Which isn't something that I was going to talk to you about as well. It's not. That's not why I have you here today. But it's just a crazy coincidence. It's how the world works, people. I can't tell you enough. The energies flow in ways for reasons. It's not something I'm going to talk about, but that's also something that influences some of your writing as well, right? Like things you see, things you experience. That it all has. It's like first responders. It all has an emotional response to the individual that it's on.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of my next questions is it emotionally written? Some of your poems, and I'm not going to state the story yet. We're going to save the story for, the next kind of discussion here. But right now the poems, were they emotionally written / driven kind of deal?
Yeah. Like I would say a large majority of the poems in that book are kind of written like during like high school for me.
Okay.
And I went through like a lot of stuff in high school. I was technically homeless for a year. I had I was just not in a good place at all. So I had basically had a lot of stuff to write about emotionally with like relationships regarding like my family, like
things going
partners,
on in your personal life.
like things For myself, like I suffered from a little bit of mental illness, and so that is like a large majority, I think, of kind of what that poetry book is it's a lot of stuff that I went through. So it's not like some of it has come from, you know, like random writing exercises, but for the most part it's all things that I have been through personally. So
and that's the best part, really, is because that's raw,
yeah,
you know, emotional writing. Like, I know a lot of
Yeah.
people say, oh, I always love when it's so emotionally driven and written, but it's like that's 100% what this book is. It's all
and
like
it's
emotionally
nerve-wracking.
I say, do you
Yeah.
ever reread it? Do you ever go through it and read
I
the
do,
old
and-
poems, or do you have goods and bads? Is it kind of like Slim Shady and Eminem? Like, he can't go back and listen to that song because
Yeah.
he hates himself. Then, like, do you just not? You know, I guess I always ask a question and try and answer it myself. But like, you know, how do you feel about some of the poems you've written in the past, and do you reflect on them?
I go back and there's quite a few of them that I really enjoy, and sometimes I find myself like I'll haven't seen something, like I honestly haven't touched this poetry book since I published it, until I sold you a copy the other day. I kind of read through it briefly, but
Interesting.
yeah, so like sometimes I go back and I'm like, wow, like I can't even believe that I wrote that. Like sometimes I used to look at it and be like, oh, this is kind of good, but now I look at it and I'm like, wow, I was like, that was actually like a really good line there.
This was freaking awesome.
Yeah, I was like,
get up and close for
I was like,
really
that was
good.
deep. Like that was a good metaphor, or like
Yeah.
whatever it happened to be. I was just like, yeah,
I surprise
like that
myself
was, yeah.
sometimes too. You just say something
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and it just ends up going crazy, like crazy good. It's just.
But I can
wow.
like read through one of my poems and kind of takes me back to exactly where I was when I wrote it. Like I can look at one and be like, oh, I know exactly what I was going through when I wrote
know
this poem.
See,
Like,
that's awesome. See, that's
I can tell you
fantastic,
exactly who
though.
this is about.
But that's like well,
Yeah.
not targeted. You know, if
Yeah,
you're
but,
watching
yeah.
now, hey, just know maybe you know.
Hey, you could take it as a positive, or you know,
exactly.
you've got a
it's
poem published about you.
about
so
you, even though
better be
nobody ever
nice to
knows
me.
it's about you, because I don't ever name my names. You know, that's the best kind of poems out there. Well, that kind of answers the emotionally driven question there. I guess one of the questions that I was gonna really lead into at the beginning, as you had mentioned short stories and stuff, is why did you end up just sticking with poems? Was it an easier way to express emotion? Was it better than writing a story? Because I know, even just in comparison to lengths, this is a 240-page book versus 4 paragraphs of a poem.
yeah.
But quality over quantity, one of those things.
For me, I've always loved poetry because I love the freedom of it. Like, there's so many different types of writing, and sometimes I look at those and feel like it's something that I can't do. But when I look at poetry's for everybody. Like, most of mine is like free verse, which is obviously, there's no rules to free verse, but that's what I love about it.
Well, I was going to say, I don't actually know the
Yeah.
different types of poetry. That's why I have you on today, because you're a published author, and I'm not one that loves to read.
Yeah.
And, I've never been one that really has loved to read. With the brain injury, that definitely doesn't help my wanting to read, because the part of my brain that got damaged was, the language side,
Yeah.
where so the desire to read isn't there, but to be able to sit down with an author who, has a published book and can kind of give me the insides of, what the writing styles are and what they're like, and, what is that like. So I guess in the statement that started as a question is going to end as a statement and a question. What are the different kinds of poetry writing? 'Cause I feel like I cut your last answer off there as well, so I apologize about
that's
that.
okay.
But if we circle around that after that, well, what are the song types? The poetry types.
I don't really dabble in a lot. Like, I mostly stick to free verse, but there's like rhyming and
Oh, you're like okay, no, true, like your A B or A
Yeah.
B C C C, true.
yeah, there's
So I guess
there's so many different types, but for the most part I just kind of stick to the free verse.
So that circles
there's
my
no
question
rules
around
to it,
what
so-
is free verse? Yeah, just no rules no
it's-
rhythm.
Yeah, it's basically just no rules, so there's no like length to it. Like when you do a haiku, it's like those five syllables, 7 syllables kind of thing, right? So there's like
Every line ends on a syllable, or
I think it's 7, 5, and then 7. Or
so
or
7 lines,
or vice
5
versa,
lines, 7
yeah.
lines. Oh, interesting.
That's a really tough one to do. It's super tough. But
Well, it's
yeah, so free verse is basically just there's no rules. Like you can kind of do whatever you want.
it can
with
be as long as you want. It
Yeah,
could be
short
one
as you
line. It
want,
could be
yeah.
8 lines. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's actually incredibly interesting. For anyone who's watching, who's interested in wanting to try writing poetry, and you're afraid maybe because you don't have the rhythm or the rhyme, or you can't rhyme hype with bike or whatever. free verse right there. You don't have to rhyme. It can just be an expression of how you're feeling. And I guess that kind of ends up leading me into the next question, which was with the emotionally driven kind of writing and targeted poems, not dropping names, but it's like I wrote this poem because of this person, this experience. Do you think those are good, bad? I say sad or harsh, so it's like the range of emotions. It's happy, sad, angry, remorse.
I think most of the poems in that book would tend to have like a little bit of a darker, sadder side to them. There's definitely some in there that are a little bit mean, for sure.
And when you say mean, and I apologize, I'm probably going to add a bleep for this video. Are you calling people nuts or what do you mean by mean?
Well, like, for example, like I've written poems about like people I've dated and stuff like that, like just relationships I've had with people. So if something kind of, has upset something in me, there might be like a line, or you might even end up with a whole poem.
Again,
where
targeted.
It's just like, but it's just for me, like my poetry was just getting my emotions out, right?
It was expressing yourself.
So you could pull one of those poems out and read it to me right now and just be like, do you kind of, do you still like feel this way about this person? And I'd probably look at you and be like, oh my gosh, like I wrote that.
I wrote that when I was
3 years ago, 7 years
16,
ago.
16, I was emotionally charged.
And
My hormones were through the roof. I was just
in
pissed
that
at
moment.
Everybody.
That was just purely what I was feeling.
Yeah.
So like I don't hold back when I write poems. Like there's some poems that are really sensitive to me that haven't even made it in those books, and that some people have never ever seen except for me.
Well, see, that actually leads me into a nice good follow-up question. Do you have a lot of unreleased work,
I think I actually was just going through poems I've written since I've published that book, and I think I'm sitting at probably about 30 right now that I've got.
So I'm not saying there's another book in the future.
There will be another book in the future, but
we heard it first Crawfords HOUSE podcast.
Be like five to 10 poems maybe I have saved on my computer that were cut from this book.
Interesting. And now, why were they cut? Were they just too emotionally? Did you just not happy with them when they didn't go with the rest of them? You're just like, these aren't up to par with the quality that these are.
I was trying to make them, for the most part, like similar. Like a lot of them are like mental health focused and like experience focused, but I had some that like I've written about nature, or I have some that are like very personal for some like traumatic experiences that I've been through.
Absolutely. And sometimes that's the best way to express yourself is to write
I
that.
contemplated for a very long time whether or not I wanted to put those in the book, and I just I felt like it wasn't time yet. And this was a big chunk of my soul that I was sharing with the universe, and I felt like I wasn't quite ready to get that deep with my first book.
Well, hey, no, but that's what ends up driving people to want to come back, right?
Yeah.
It's like you release one book where it's like, hey, you know what? This is a cute little dog, but I've been told there's a litter of them.
Yeah.
And you gotta see the second book to get the litter of puppies, because the first one's just a little intro to me. Well, that's fantastic. So that is the poem book, The Darkness and the Dawn. I'll put a link to Bailey's Facebook page in the description. You can get this. You can actually end up getting both books. What is it, like $30, $32 or something? I gave you $40 because I believe you should support the artist.
34 together?
34 together, or you can get each one.
36
together, sorry. So you can get both of these together online, 36. If not, they're about $20 a piece otherwise. So she cuts you a deal when you buy both of them and support the artist. And if you're lucky enough, she might even sign it at a public book signing for you. But you got to get the public book signing, because those exclusive signature bikes, those
May
are
17th.
Well, right there. So we do. I was going to kind of lead into that after I discuss the novel here, but we're going to keep the novel down for 30 seconds and tell me about this May 17th appearance, because I have seen it on Facebook.
Yeah. So I happen to know the girl who owns Merryfields in Woodstock. So I am going to be there for 2 different times to do book signings, and that is on my Facebook page under the events. So
right on. So check it out.
There,
Bailey Ward Writer.
Yep.
At facebook.com. No, I'm kidding. It's facebook.com/Bailey Ward Writer. So you can check that out. Check the event out on there in Woodstock. If you're in the Woodstock area, mid-May 16th, it was, sorry? 17th, sorry. Check it out on Facebook. The event and the details are there. She'll be signing books. She'll have copies. And like I said, you can...
There's only a few of them left.
Oh, snap. So
less than 20.
Less than 20 right there. So better get them, people, because I got mine and I can't wait to read
Yeah.
them. Because that's the other thing is that with this short novel, it is a short novel. It's 250 pages, and that is a really appealing length for me as someone who doesn't love reading, because when someone throws me a book, there's actually 2 books. I could actually say there's 4 books I've been working on for the past 7 years to read. Travis Barker's What Can I Say? That book came out in 2012, I think, and I still haven't read the whole thing. Now, I stopped reading it the last 6 years, but I got this Chasing Shadows book from Tom DeLonge. That's a 700 pager, and I've been reading that for 4 years. And it's just big books intimidate me. So when a book is, it's a nice medium length like this, I really find that more grasping. I don't know where I was going to go with that, but I was just kind of, I guess, giving the book a compliment in that sense. So let's talk about The Thread of Life. This is Bailey Ward's first published short story. This one actually came out, I believe, in 2018. Let me just check the date here.
I was finished
October.
writing it in 2018.
Yeah. And well, it was published in 20. Well, I guess it
So
says
it was officially
copyrighted.
released. Yeah, it was officially released this year in March.
March of 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was my mistake. I guess I got lucky and got a copy shortly. I guess I started knowing you shortly after it was published, so I didn't ever get to know the pre-release Bailey. That's a totally different person, I can only assume. Probably
a lot more stressed out.
Probably a lot more stressed out. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Wasn't, hadn't even signed any yet, so it's crazy. So, like I had said at the beginning of the video, this book is about a lady who goes and meets with not a future predictor. What are those people called? Psychics?
Yeah, she's a psychic.
And the psychic tells her that she is going to die, which obviously everyone dies in life. It's don't ever be afraid of death, people. It gets us all. But she tells her it's going to happen very soon.
Yeah.
If she continues the way her life is going. So she tries to change the way her life goes. And the big part that I don't think is really said in the back here is does she know if that's the right thing to change or not? I think it actually is mentioned in the last line.
It's kind of up in the air.
Yeah, so that's actually huge because we all face daily issues and challenges where we can attack it one way or another. It's nothing to be, it's nothing to be ashamed about. It's nothing to be sad about because this is just something that everyone deals with. Good situations, bad situations, remorseful situations, tragic situations, which ends up leading to a remorseful and sadful, and then eventually be happy because we all, we all celebrate life over death. Celebrate life over death, people. It's just celebrate the life that was lived, not the life that has passed. Not trying to be crazy inspirational, but I just like to say shit that kinds of mean stuff sometimes. So tell me about the meaning of life. What inspired this to write this? Where did you get the idea for the story? How did you build the book? Really, a song?
Yeah, a song
was it
from
by
the Disney
Taylor Swift?
Channel.
Okay, Disney.
Yeah.
Almost as bad. Okay, no, I'm kidding. It was a good channel. Good channel.
Oh, okay. To this day, I used to have a mix CD, and it had a bunch
MTV
of
Music Hits 2003.
No, I made it myself mix CD,
Self-burn.
old school. Yeah,
Old-
burned it myself.
Anybody watching nowadays, they don't have that pleasure of burning CDs,
Yeah.
like LimeWire and all those classic
Those good
virus-infected
times.
programs. Yep, sorry, Mom. For the computer viruses. Yeah, but yep.
Yeah. But yeah, so I had this song, and to this day, I still can't find what it was.
Really?
But yeah, which is unfortunate. I know I know the band, but I'd really have to sit down and go through all the songs,
All the
and
music,
I can't even
yep.
think of the band's name off the top of my head right now.
No pressure. Fall Out Boy or something. No, I'm
I
kidding.
wish it was, but no. Yeah, so there was basically a line in the song that was like, what would you do if you knew how your life was going to play out? And I was like, that is actually a crazy idea. I was
Yeah.
like, if I knew every single thing that was going to happen to me in my life, would I just let that happen, or would I try to change it? And then I kind of just played around with that idea, and it sort of tied into fate there. So I kind of made, in the book, you'll notice that fate is always spelt with a capital F as well. And that's because fate is kind of supposed to be its own entity sort of in the book there.
Like death is creeping within the words.
Yeah.
All right, I searched that line and I got Emotionless by Drake. So I'm just gonna
that's not
close the browser and assume that is not.
Yeah.
We don't classify Drake as music in this household. Not Crawford's house. Drake's a very talented, musician. Rapper, which is different. But I can't give him that. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was
Click
whatever,
on like if you
whatever
have to. I'm
band
sorry.
did Blame
Please don't.
Blame It on September.
Blame It
that
on
band.
September.
Yeah.
Oh, it is the band September?
No, that's one of their songs. That's one of their songs I can remember. But
I was
just
going to say,
that
September's
band.
usually a good month, but okay.
Yeah.
No, so that's actually a crazy line, though, because do you ever think about how your life is going to plan out? And I don't. Like, people ask me that all the time. Like, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, dude, I don't even have a 3-month plan. You know, like, I just live in the
me
moment.
Too. They ask me that all the time at work. They're always like, where do you want to be in like 2 years? And I'm like,
employed, you know?
Yeah, like, can I still work for you? Is that okay?
Happily, I'm happy here. I'm having a good time here. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that is crazy because it is like that. The whole book plays out where she's trying to change decisions that she thinks need to be changed, maybe. And that's a big kind of question where it's like, what needs to be changed and what needs to not be changed.
Yeah.
So I get just the song really inspired it.
It kind of just like it gave me the idea for it, and then I kind of, you know, over the years, like I think I spent 5 to 6 years writing that book. And
wow. So it was a lengthy project, though.
Yeah, I can't even. If you saw what the original book looked like, it is almost nothing compared to what it is now. It has been rewritten, I would say, about 3 or 4 times, basically, like completely gone through and
scrapped,
edited. And that was
and
prior. That was like probably about the 4th time is when it was ready to be a book, and then after that it had been edited 2 more times. So it's a
review,
a long process.
edit, and you know, like that's the best way you can get the best writing.
That is the most boring part of the process, but
well, hey, not every process is all exhilarating roller
that's true.
coasters, right? Roller coasters
Yeah.
suck. I don't like being shaken around violently. You know, you behemoth is the smoothest ride I ever had. Yeah, it also drops like 900 feet from the sky. Guess what? I don't like to do fall from the heights. Also, I don't care. So,
bravery.
you had mentioned that you were working on you weren't I don't know if you mentioned it on camera or off camera. I might have just spilled the beans, but you said you are working on a future release. Are you able to maybe tell us anything about that?
I've kind of tried to make it my plan where I would do sort of like a poetry book and then a novel and then a poetry book and a novel kind of thing, just because I enjoy both of them. I've been kind of thinking about doing like a comic book style sort of manga as well, like kind of future project. I'm just
comic
kind
books are
of
huge.
yeah,
Like,
I'm just
the
kind
comic
of
book lovers
playing
huge.
around in a little bit of everything
Everything.
right now, and just kind of finding
You're Bob Ross.
yeah.
You're
Yeah,
not
what it
afraid to
is, I
dip your
like,
pen in every ink.
I know I like writing and I like art. Like my friend designed the cover for the poetry book, but
right on.
I did the one for the novel.
So cool. Here's another refresher of how cool that artwork is. Shout out to the artist there. I don't know if we're going to give the artist name or whatever. That's up to you.
It's Kate, my friend Kate.
Friend Kate of Bailey's. So everyone go to Bailey's Facebook page and get real weird friend search note. Don't do that. Don't do that, people. But right on. So you're so the tentative future is there, but we don't know what will the release be, when it will be released, kind of deal.
I've kind
which
of,
is pretty exciting in a sense too.
Yeah, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a backseat to the writing right now, just because, like, since the poetry book, after that, it was just the novel, and it's just, I've done a lot in the past few years, just since these have both come out.
Yeah,
and,
just like your just general life has kind of done things. Yeah.
So I'm kind of refreshing right now and kind of trying to figure out where exactly, I want to go with my next project and sort of see what happens. But I'm always on the side, kind of writing poetry every once in a while. I'm just not putting in as much time as I was when I was working on the books. And
you sound like every person in every band I know. That's all good. Like everyone's always working on it in the background.
You got to take a break eventually, right?
For
so
sure,
I
because
just
you
wanted
overwhelm
to,
yourself sometimes,
sit
right?
back and just be proud of what I've done and kind of live a little bit.
Absolutely. Be proud of what you've done.
Come back to it eventually and,
I'd say
give my brain some time to refresh from reading through all that. I've probably read that book at least 16 times.
Really?
If not more.
Your own book.
All the way through.
And you know what's going to happen at every point of it. And then you just...
Sometimes it even makes me cry. Like, there's one part I get to where I cry every time I read it.
Well, now I'm a little
even though
shook
it's my
to
own
read it.
writing.
I don't want to cry reading a book. That'll make me like, no.
My
but
mom's
it made
friend
me...
cried when she read it, too. So.
Well, hey,
she said she couldn't put it down. She had to finish it all the way through. When
I was
going
to
to
say, if it's emotionally gripping book, then it's like that's like the hook, line, sinker kind of deal. It's like you have them hooked because they're crying with the book, not at it. They're crying with it because the story is changing. It's the best kind of writing.
I always said a number one compliment in art, music, writing, anything is when you get someone to cry, because that's how you know they really feel what you want them to feel.
It's actually crazy because I just saw a video the other day where it was like this rapper performing, but there was a guy in the front row and he had his head down, his eyes closed, and he was just like bobbing his head, and then he put his head up, and the guy on stage saw that he was bawling his eyes out, and he stopped the whole concert. He was like, "Whoa,
Oh, no way.
bro, what's going on?" And the guy's just like, "Man, like I had an emotionally and physically abusive mother when I was younger, no father in the picture, and we didn't talk to each other for years. And then when we reconnected, this was the song that made us reconnect." And it was like, that's so huge for the artist to hear because they release it in hopes that maybe somebody can be affected by it. But to be told like that, I guess even my sense and myself in relation where, I do speeches with hospitals to high schoolers, and it's like these kids, I don't know these kids. I'll never know these kids. I don't really care to know these kids. But what I do care to do is spread them a message that can make sure their lives can be as long as possible. Because I've seen what happens when that life almost gets cut off. I was that person.
Yeah.
And I saw what it did to a family, a community. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. It's when I get kids coming up to me after these speeches and they're crying or they're like on the verge of emotionally, and they're like, "Thank you for sharing." And it's like, I know that you're going to change your future because of what I've done. And that's so rewarding. And it is really rewarding.
Yeah, exactly.
So that can't be, that's probably phenomenal. That's gotta be awesome. It's gotta be awesome.
It's definitely my favorite part of the writing. I really, even where I work, I have a tenant there who said she reads my poetry book every night because there's a poem in there I wrote about my nanny passing away, and she says it connects with her, so she reads it every single night.
The thread of life,
which is kind of cool. And like I've had like a rabbi buy one of my books and said he was going to read it in a support group that they have.
Support group, right on.
And the cool part about it is you never really know how many people you've reached or touched.
Exactly.
And,
that's why when
it's
people,
always nice to hear that they connect with it.
Yeah.
It's
when
awesome.
people have asked me that before, it's just like I put the infinite sign in my head. I take that number 8 and I just turn it sideways and stretch it out a little bit, and it's like, you know what? It doesn't
touching one life is more than enough.
Exactly though, right? Having one person kind of get something from it is just as good as having a million people get in front of it. But one day, I guess for myself,
I could be famous.
Well, that's exactly it. One day, I'm
20.
I'm 25. Surprised if everybody thought I was 30. Just kidding. I'm 25. Or if you thought I was younger, and just kidding. But like at 25, I'm still so young in this life. Maybe I'm a third of my way through life right now, but that's still so young in the evolution of like a plant. Like so it's like you're two books published at 22, 21. So that's insane because there are some people that. I actually was listening to a CBC interview a couple weeks ago, and they were interviewing this guy who was talking about. Now, in fairness, he was a Nazi, but they were talking about him. He was not he wasn't a good guy, but they were talking about the writing, and he didn't release anything until he was like 58. Because of all the years that he had done of forced, Nazi camps and being a German soldier and all the things, he didn't like it. And it was like they were examining this book, and they're like, the things he writes about, are terribly racist, and they're terribly like genocidal and things like that. But this was the life that he was in. This was his emotion, as you write in your book, Emotion.
Yeah.
This was who he is, and he didn't release anything until he was 58. So to have 2 books published at 22, Bailey, that's pretty freaking phenomenal, you know? So I've covered everything I wanted to talk to you about because the books, you've covered everything greatly with the books. I love respecting the viewers' times. I never really try and want to take it over 45 minutes, 30 to 45. I like to respect them. Not everybody's got a lot of time to listen to me talk, but I like to think people do. So, like,
of course.
Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap this up? Anything you want to talk about the books that I didn't get a chance to mention? Anything that was on your mind that I didn't get a chance to poke? Anything at all?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered quite a bit there, so...
Right on. If you want to stay up to date with Bailey Ward in the future, it's BAILEY WARD, like Crawford, just without the well, it's just not even like that. That's just that. No,
follow the Facebook page. Just
follow
do
Facebook.
Just do it.
Facebook.com/Bailey Ward Writer.
Yeah.
WRITER, people. Writer, like you're a writer.
I'll just drop the link.
Drop the link. I always do drop links in the description. I will put the link in the description if you want to check that out. you can order the books from her. She will be in Woodstock. It was May 17th.
Yeah.
From
find it on the Facebook page.
I
as
say
well.
from
There's
you'll
two
find
different times,
all
so.
the information on the Facebook
Yep.
page. The 2 books here up for purchase. We have The Thread of Life is a short story about a woman who is told that her life is going to end very soon if she does not change some of the things that are going to happen to her. And we also have The Darkness and the Dawn with an incredibly crazy looking graphic on the front. And this is a collection of poems, I should say, not poetries. That's grammatically wrong. Bailey, thank you so much for being on Crawfords House Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and I can't wait to see what you produce in the future. As always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. If you want to check out what I mentioned earlier, Wednesdays, Drivewire Radio, just check it out. Facebook, Drivewire Radio. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching
Like,
Crawfords.
share, and subscribe.
And her as well. Make sure to go check out her page.
No, I was talking about you.
Well, thank you. I support the. Thank you. Fist bump.
Yeah.
4-finger fist bump. It's cool. Like, share, and subscribe to her as well. If you like writing, check her out. Bailey Ward Writer. Facebook, just Bailey Ward. The description will be, or the link will be in the description. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching Crawford's House Podcast. I think I've said the same thing 9 times.
That's okay. We love you anyways.